Here's a dish that was once served in almost every restaurant from diners to Delmonico's. It was so popular that it has multiple claims to its origin. In my mess kit, I'm going to revive this recipe that's fit for a king, and it'll make you the envy of every other outdoor adventurer in this week's Making a Mess with the Yankee Camper.
This recipe is a throwback to the 1950s and 60s, but it's a great recipe for your mess kit. So let's put together the ingredients for chicken a la king. The first thing we'll need is a 5-ounce can of chicken breast, a 4-ounce can of mushrooms, and a quarter of a cup of plain white rice placed in to a Loctite plastic bag, which I've marked rice for chicken a la king. And then in a separate Loctite bag, we're going to combine a half a teaspoon of onion powder, a half a teaspoon of chicken bouillon granules, 1.5 tablespoons of dried instant milk, a tablespoon of cornstarch to thicken it, 1 teaspoon of butter flakes, 1/8 of a teaspoon of paprika, and a dash of black pepper. We'll combine all of these into the paper bag. And we're ready to go make a mess at our campsite.
Did you know that before World War II, chicken was considered a luxury dish? Although more available in rural areas, the poultry was prized for egg production over protein, and the birds were less meaty, so pork or beef was favored. Even veal was less costly. Oh, by the way, the chickens were sold live, so dinner had to have its neck wrung or lose its head, and then be plucked and eviscerated before baking, broiling, or frying. This, of course, was 20 years before it took a tough man to make a tender chicken. During the 1950s, poultry production became more industrialized, and the price of the birds dropped, as well as the increase in availability of just parts. During the 1970s, we grew up on chicken legs. It wasn't until the 80s when the thigh and drumstick were sold separately. Around that time, the boneless chicken breast became readily available as well. And before I move on to the a la king part of this segment, I have to say that I'm appalled at the price of chicken wings. I know I'm dating myself, but chicken wings were served at parties because they were so cheap. These were cast offs that nobody wanted and were packaged in large bags at bargain basement prices. Just an FYI, those sauces you use on wings work just as well on drumsticks, often at a quarter of the price per pound. But I digress. Dishes like chicken a la king were prepared in the finest restaurant kitchens because the meat was often more expensive. Combined with a rich buttery cream sauce and adding mushrooms and pimentos, made the shredded chicken a meal fit for a king. And maybe that's where the name came from. But there's a number of claims on the original recipe. Delmonico's in New York states that the dish originated in its kitchen by the chef Charles Renhofer and was named chicken a la Keene for Foxhall Parker Keene, a horse owner and breeder. London, not to be outdone, has a claim that it created it at Claridge's in 1881 for the winner of the recent Grand Prix horse race in Paris, J.R. Keene, who was the father of the previously mentioned Foxhall. The horse was supposedly named Foxhall as well. A third possibility is that it was named for Bill King, the chef at the Philadelphia Bellevue Stratford Hotel in the 1890s. Many Pennsylvanians are hardcore on this one. If that's not enough, a fourth story is that it was created back in New York for the Brighton Beach hotel proprietor E. Clark King II by Chef George Greenwald in 1898. I find this, and any of the others laying claim to the recipe, implausible, as the New York Times published a version 5 years before. By the 1960s, it was a blue plate special at diners and truck stops around the nation. And by the 1990s, it had all but disappeared from menus and kitchen tables alike. But that doesn't mean it isn't filling and delicious. Now you know. By 1911, Chicken a la King appeared in Fannie Farmer's famous Boston Cooking School cookbook. I'll tell you more about her in a moment, but let's get our supper started.
Let's go ahead and unpack our ingredients. So we've got a can of chicken, can of mushrooms, and the rice and the mix. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know I'm a big fan of reusing the liquid that comes in the cans. However, for this particular recipe, we're just going to make the rice as regular rice, and then we'll use the liquid in making our sauce. To start, we'll need to measure out a half a cup of water. We're going to use our smaller pot. We'll just add that water right in. Let's light the stove and get that water started boiling. Put a cover on that, and that'll probably take about 2 to 3 minutes to come up to heat. You'll want to get that water up to a good rolling boil before you add the rice in. That water is now boiling pretty hard. I'm going to take my pot holder, just place this right here, and add in that rice. Let's give that a little stir around, and return it to the heat, and let it come back up to a boil. That water is boiling with the rice. Put the cover on, and then reduce the heat to very, very low. Let that cook for about 10 to 12 minutes. The rice won't quite be done, but that's okay. If you notice that the lid starts to pop, turn the heat down a little bit more. You want to keep it just at a nice low simmer. While that rice is cooking, I'm going to put together my sauce. Now I need a half a cup of liquid for this to make a sauce. I'm going to open the chicken just slightly and pour that into my measuring cup. It's not a problem if you don't get all of the liquid out. I'm going to repeat the process for the mushrooms. Just open it slightly and pour that in as well. One of the nice things about these small cans, they use about a quarter of a cup of liquid. So adding these two together gets me right at a half a cup. Place these aside for the moment. Take my fry pan, add that liquid right to the fry pan, place the measuring cup aside, then open up my Chicken a la King dry mix. Pour that in and mix it up. You want to make sure that you get all of those lumps of the cornstarch out. I think I've got most of the lumps out of the cornstarch. Let's open our chicken. Let's open our mushrooms. You'll want to break up those chicken bits. Stir that all in. And while that rice finishes cooking, let me tell you about Fannie Farmer.
Certain that she would be remembered for her contributions to nutrition and healthy eating habits, Fannie Merritt Farmer is best known for creating cookbooks that standardized measurements to assure that novices and experienced participants creating culinary offerings could consistently reproduce the recipes printed within the pages. Born in Boston during the middle of the 19th century, Miss Farmer was the oldest of four sisters. Around 1873, at age 16, she suffered a paralytic stroke which forced her to abandon hopes of her attending college. Her road to recovery was slow, but she spent those years perfecting her cooking skills at her mother's boarding house. Interested in learning more about the culinary arts, Miss Fanny enrolled in the Boston Cooking School, which had only been open for less than 5 years. Upon her graduation, Fannie Farmer accepted the role of assistant principal at the school until the passing of Mrs. Dearborn in 1891, when Miss Fanny took the reins. While the school focused on assisting the homemaker, it also ensured that nutrition was adhered to and began developing recipes to assist those who were hospitalized in assuring they were being fed meals designed to improve health and strength. During this time, she undertook the task of updating a cookbook the school had published in 1884. Its primary goal was to act as a textbook and eliminate the need to hand copy recipes. Developed by Mrs. Mary J. B. Lincoln, wife of David A., originally from Attleboro, although she became a celebrated advocate for health and nutrition in the culinary arts during her time, she never received the acclaim of her pupil. In 1896, Miss Farmer reworked the book, expanding the recipes into other areas to include canning and housekeeping. Despite the publisher's reluctance, the book became a sensation and sold out the initial copies, becoming the best-selling cookbook of the era. Officially titled The Boston Cooking School Cookbook, most people simply refer to it as Fannie Farmer's Cookbook, and you can still purchase it today in its 13th edition almost 130 years later. In 1902, the school merged with Boston's Simmons College, and Fannie Farmer opened her own school for cooking. She continued to teach and lecture at Harvard Medical School on nutrition until her death, despite having never fully recovered from the stroke she suffered as a young woman and was restricted to a wheelchair around 1908. Fannie Merritt Farmer died at age 57 in 1915, having suffered another stroke. As a side note, her name was so familiar and her reputation so untarnished that 4 years after her death, a Canadian politician and businessman expanded his confection company into the United States, adopting the famous name Stateside, although he didn't use any of Fannie Farmer's recipes in manufacturing or give her any credit. He did, however, change the spelling of his company's first name to, as they claim, avoid confusion. Now you know. From the Queen of Cooking, let's finish our royal meal at the campsite. It's been 12 minutes since I put that rice on. I'm just going to take my pot holder and remove the rice from the heat, but don't uncover it.
Just let it sit there and absorb the rest of that water. In the meantime, we're going to turn the heat back up, and we'll place our fry pan on top of the heat, and we're going to let that start to thicken. This will require constant attention. Just stir that around as that sauce heats through. This won't take probably more than 3 or 4 minutes. You'll be tempted to open that pot of rice. I caution you not to. Just let it sit there and continue to absorb all of that liquid. If you open the lid, all the heat escapes and it will start to cool down. For the cornstarch to thicken requires a certain amount of fat. So the fat from the can of chicken bonds with the cornstarch, and that allows it, once it sort of comes up and starts to get a slight boil, it will thicken right up. Once the bubbles start to form, it's important to continually just gently stir it, allowing all of that mixture to come together. It will make like a gravy. You can see that's started to thicken up. It's probably got another 2 minutes or so on the heat. I'm going to lower the heat a little bit. Just continue to stir it while it thickens. Be careful to not let it scorch. That's why it's important to continually stir it. So I think that's reached the desired thickness that I want. And turn off the stove and swap the rice for the sauce. Next, I'll take my plate, there is the rice. I'm just going to spoon the rice right into my plate. I'll add in my sauce. And there you have a meal fit for a king. Chicken a la king over rice. I'm going to eat my supper and then clean up my mess. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Also consider subscribing to my channel. I put out a video every week, either on mess kit cooking or campgrounds, or even the camping gear that I use. And if you have any thoughts or comments, put them down below in the comment section. I try to answer every single posting. Thank you for watching.